The last scam text message you received was probably written by a slave. Their job was to text you a wrong number, be charming, and slowly talk you out of your savings. I kept seeing the same story: a wrong number, a romance, a crypto app, everything gone. So I stopped asking who gets scammed and started asking where the scam actually comes from. And the answer wasn't a person, it was a place. A fake city running a theft worth tens of billions of dollars a year. In Myanmar Township, in Myanmar's Karen state, directly across the water from Thailand, there's a place called Shui Koko. A decade ago, this was quite rural, a borderland. Large-scale construction only began in 2017, when a Chinese-born businessman named She Zhijiang partnered with a militia-linked local company and pitched a $15 billion special economic zone, its own tax and legal rules, that he called Yatai New City. In 2022, She was arrested in Thailand and was extradited to China. Here's the first strange thing. Myanmar's Investment Commission had only ever approved a small housing estate, 59 luxury villas on about 22 acres. What actually got built was a skyline, high-rise hotels, gaudy casinos and call centers, all covered in Chinese language signage. A compound built by Chinese criminal syndicates for a Chinese-speaking clientele in a remote corner of Myanmar. A few miles away sits another compound, KK Park, built between 2019 and 2021 with its own supermarkets, its own hospital, its own hotels. By 2023, one estimate put at least 20,000 people inside KK Park and the neighboring site at Shui Koko. So who lets you build a private city with watchtowers and armed guards? That's the question that cracked the whole thing open. Because the answer isn't a company, it's an army. Something I'll come back to, because it's the reason none of this has been shut down. Let me introduce you to a man named Wang Xing. He's a Chinese actor. In January 2025, he flew to Bangkok, ostensibly for a film shoot, with a real-looking audition and contract. Within days, he had been driven across the river into Myanmar, his head shaved, sitting in a scam compound. He was one of the lucky ones, though. His girlfriend went public, and it became a national story in China, and he was found 4 days later. Most people are not found in 4 days, however. The recruitment is almost always the same shape. A job ad on Facebook or Instagram, or China's versions of these. Good salary based in Thailand. You fly in, someone picks you up, and instead of an office, you're taken over the border and sold. The detail that shocked me the most: these aren't desperate, uneducated targets. The UN found that many victims were well-educated, multilingual, some with graduate degrees, because you need those skills to run the con. In 2023, the United Nations Human Rights Office estimated that at least 120,000 people in Myanmar and roughly 100,000 in Cambodia may be held in conditions forcing them to run online scams. They come from across Southeast Asia, from China, from South Asia, and increasingly from Africa and Latin America. A UN report in 2026 found victims trafficked from at least 66 countries, and many of the trapped workers are Chinese too, like Wang Xing, an industry that preys on its own, which is part of why China has pushed hardest for crackdowns. India alone repatriated 283 of its nationals from the border in a single operation in early 2025. And inside, Amnesty titled its 2025 report, "I was someone else's property." And that's not a metaphor. Survivors describe barbed wire, CCTV, guards with electric shock batons, people beaten and electrocuted for missing targets, working while sick, dragging IV poles. People are sold from one compound to the next, and families are told to wire a ransom to get them out. It is functionally a slave economy, and the product it manufactures is you getting scammed. So what are they actually forced to do all day? How does this scam factory work? The technique has a name in Chinese. It's 杀猪盘, pig butchering. The metaphor is deliberate and horrifying. Phase 1, find the pig. Phase 2, fatten the pig, Weeks, sometimes months of daily good mornings, texts building a romance or a friendship with no mention at all of money. Phase 3, kill the pig. Now a kindly uncle figure helps you set up a crypto wallet and steers you into a trading platform that looks completely professional and of course is completely fake. You invest, the app shows gains, you invest more, people are talked into loans, refinancing homes, selling stock. Then you try to withdraw, and suddenly there's a tax, a fee, some international clearance you have to settle first. There is no money left, of course. There never was. ProPublica obtained the training manuals these workers are handed, instructions to, quote, create dependency, end quote, and, quote, make them fall for you, end quote, under posters reading, one team, one dream. Miss your quota though, and you're beaten. Reply too slowly, and you're made to stand in the hot sun for hours. One police inspection of a single complex in Cambodia seized 8,776 phones, 804 computers, and 10 electric shock devices. This is not an office, this is a factory floor. Juan Santiago of the Global Anti-Scam Organization described it exactly that way. Syndicates running fraud, quote, on an industrial scale, like they're doing fraud in a factory, end quote. And it's getting worse, because now there's AI. The United Nations Drug and Crime Office reported that mentions of deepfake services in these criminal networks jumped more than 600% in the first half of 2024. Real-time face swapping on video calls. Chatbots that let one worker run dozens of relationships at once. Aaron West, a former California prosecutor who chased these cases for years, put it in a way that stuck with me. There are two layers of victims here, she told Congress in 2024, the people who lose their life savings and the people forced at gunpoint to take it from them. She described one victim that told his scammer he would rather die than lose the money. The scammer's reply, trust me, your money is safe. It wasn't. That man later checked himself into a psychiatric hospital. The title of this video says $40 billion. Let me show you where it comes from. Because honestly, it's the middle of a range, not one clean figure. Start with the low end. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimated that victims across East and Southeast Asia lost between 18 and 37 billion US dollars in 2023. Now the high end. The United States Institute of Peace put the syndicates operating out of Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos at more than 43 billion US dollars stolen a year. So 40 billion isn't a headline someone invented. It sits right in the middle of the real range. In the United States, the FBI logged $5.7 billion in crypto investment scam losses in 2024, with victims over 60 hit hardest. Americans lost at least 10 billion US dollars to those same Southeast Asian operators that same year. But where does the money physically go? It doesn't just vanish into a numbered Swiss account, right? Well, much of it flows through a Telegram-based marketplace. Think of it as Amazon for organized crime. Blockchain investigators at Elliptic exposed one called Huawei Guarantee, selling money laundering services, stolen data, even electric shackles for trafficked workers, settling almost entirely in Tether, a dollar-pegged cryptocurrency. By the time it was forced offline in 2025, its payment arm had processed over $100 billion in crypto. In May 2025, the US Treasury found that Huawei Group had laundered at least $4 billion US dollars in illicit proceeds. And the people at the top are not hiding in caves. In October 2025, US prosecutors indicted the 37-year-old chairman of Cambodia's Prince Group, Chan Zhi, who remains at large and has not answered the charges, and seized nearly $15 billion in Bitcoin, the largest forfeiture in US history. The same month, the US and UK sanctioned 146 targets tied to the group in what the Treasury called the largest action ever against Southeast Asian cybercriminals. So why is this still running? Remember that army I said I'd come back to? Here it is. Colonel Saw Chit Tho is a former Karen rebel who has cut a deal with Myanmar's military, folded his fighters into the Border Guard Force, and now commands more than 10,000 troops along this border. According to US and UK sanctions authorities, his force co-owns Soy Coco and profits from it, leasing land to operators and selling them electricity and internet piped in from Thailand. In May 2025, the US designated his border guard force, now rebranded as Karen National Army, a transnational criminal organization, sanctioning the colonel and his two sons as its leaders. The UK had already sanctioned him back in December 2023. But the militia is only half of it. The US Institute of Peace estimates that the Myanmar junta itself pockets roughly half the revenue, about $192 million from Soy Coco alone. When the government you'd need to shut this down is a silent partner in it, raids don't happen. And when pressure does come, watch what the industry does. In February 2025, after the Wang Xing scandal, Thailand cut electricity, internet and fuel to the border scam zones. For about a week, it looked like it had won. Then the compound switched to diesel generators and Starlink satellite terminals. SpaceX says it disables units it identified as unauthorized and just kept running. More than 7,000 people were released and left stranded, waiting to go home. In October 2025, the Myanmar military finally raided KK Park, detaining more than 2,000 people and seizing dozens of Starlink terminals. Days later, parts of the compound were bombed. A month later, the military hit the compound at Soy Coco, arresting 346 foreigners and seizing nearly 10,000 phones. Victory? Not quite. Locals and analysts called it partly a public relations exercise because the workers didn't go free, they scattered. New job ads for the displaced appeared on Telegram within days. Roughly 30 of these compounds line this one border, and when one gets squeezed, the operation simply hops to the next, to Cambodia, to Laos. That's the thing that got me. This isn't a place you can raid out of existence. It's a business model, and it moves. So the next time your phone lights up with the wrong number, that's just a little too friendly, remember what you're actually looking at. Not a lonely stranger, but rather the far end of a supply chain that runs through a fake city, past a private army, into a stablecoin wallet, an industry that has figured out how to turn trafficked human beings into a machine for stealing tens of billions of dollars a year.